Football is heating up on the recruiting trail as it heats up in the summer here in Texas. Plus, Melissa and I were both out at men's and women's basketball practices this week. We're going to talk about our observations, and TCU baseball is hitting the transfer portal lightly but incredibly well. Let's get all into it right now on Frogs Insider. Hey, Frog fans,
But
welcome in to the
we're
the
getting into it. We're getting into it. All of it.
guys. I just went running, and it's
Yeah,
hot.
it's
And
hot.
so just you're gonna have to deal with me today. That's just how this is.
Yeah.
But welcome into Frogs Insider. I'm Jamie Plunkett. She is Melissa Treewasser. We cover all things TCU athletics, as you probably know if you're listening to this show. We're gonna get into a lot today. Got a lot to talk about. Melissa, it was very fun though. I know we're gonna talk about this down the road. It was just really nice to get back into the basketball practice facility, hear the shoes start squeaking a little bit,
Yeah.
and see some shooty hoops happen.
Yeah, it was great to be in there. Nice and bright and early with the men this morning, and hearing Jamie Dixon's whistle aggressively at 7 a.m. In the middle of summer was awesome. And then bookended it with the women's practice and got to see our first look at a bunch of new players for both programs, but a bunch of familiar faces too. So yeah, it was great to be out there. And man, like it gets me fired up for basketball season. I know that's a long ways away, but there's a lot to be excited about with both those programs.
There really is. There really is. A lot of new faces on both rosters. We'll get into that. How some of them looked on the court today. But Melissa, we got to start with football because it's recruiting season. We've seen TCU add 6 players in the last 15 days to their 2026 class. A lot of really talented guys, a lot of really interesting prospects that Sonny Dykes is adding. And it's interesting that this burst has happened when it did because I just went on Dave Campbell's Texas Football's main show last week with Mike Craven. We recorded it. I don't believe it's out yet. I think it'll be out in the next couple weeks or so to talk about TCU. And he and I were discussing an article that he wrote earlier this summer about the different recruiting strategies between Sonny Dykes at TCU and Joey McGuire at Texas Tech, where Sonny has committed to high school classes, developmental cycles, and supplementing in the portal, while Joey McGuire and his staff have really kind of leaned all the way into let's get this portal action going and see if we can't just build a roster with veteran talent from other places. And I think 2025 is going to be a really nice case study for which one of those recruiting strategies is more successful. And I'm really looking forward to seeing which one bears out.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Sonny try to reload through the portal after 2022, and it didn't
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
I think that has weighed heavily on him as he has approached the next couple of recruiting cycles. But I also think that it's the ability to get high end talent both to TCU and then keep them there that has kind of dictated their strategy. I think TCU has done a good job. They don't have a Cody Campbell that is just shelling out literally millions of dollars for multiple sports. But what they have done is, I think, properly identify and rate talent and kind of set market value appropriately and then paid their guys that have performed. I mean, we saw what happened with Josh Hoover in the spring, and other schools certainly came calling, notably Tennessee from all reports. And they did what they had to do to keep that guy and develop. And I think that especially on the offensive side of the ball where there's finally some continuity, it's super important to keep guys in your system. So I'm not saying that Texas Tech won't be successful. I think they've certainly brought in a lot of guys, but you have to really believe that your locker room culture can overcome a bunch of new faces in new places. Can Joey McGuire do what Mark Campbell did? Like that's really
Yeah.
going to be the question. Or is what Sonny, and on the flip side of that, can TCU hold on to that elite talent, not just through signing day, but through the next 3 or 4 years so that they get their value back? Like that, I think 2023 and 2025 are very different worlds in college athletics. And so this will be a really fascinating case study, as you put it, to watch. Now the schedules aren't equitable.
No.
There's so many other factors that are going to play into this, but as we said multiple times here, this is kind of a no excuses year for TCU. And Joey McGuire is not much different. Joey McGuire's seat's going to get a lot hotter than Sonny Dykes if either of those teams underperform according
Yeah.
to expectations.
Oh, totally agree. And I think the most interesting thing about it, and you mentioned retention as being such a huge part of this game now, especially if you're taking the tack that Sunny is. Only four, I think, players hit the transfer portal after spring ball for TCU, and none of them were contributors, right?
Yeah.
I don't mean that in like a pejorative
Sure.
way. Just they were low down on the depth chart, and so they were seeking playing time elsewhere. So it wasn't like you saw a Dom Williams hit the portal and get a huge paycheck to go somewhere else. They did a great job of retaining their veteran talent and making sure that everyone was taken care of when it came to NIL and now revenue sharing. So it takes both, I think, but I think that the Frogs, just based on what we've seen over the last couple of months since the end of spring ball, are positioned well, both culturally and financially, to retain these players that they're developing. Now, we're going to see really clearly in 2025 how well these guys have developed because they've been here for a few years now. Sonny's had the number one recruiting class, I think, 3 of the 4 years. High school recruiting classes, 3 of the 4 years since he's been the head coach. So it's time to see what dividends those the recruiting fruit provides.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to end up by the end of this year having signed 50-ish high school players, right, over the last two recruiting cycles after such a gigantic class last year. How many of those 50 players are contributors, in 2026 and 2027? Like, that's
Yeah.
going to be the ultimate thing. And, you mentioned, we kind of glossed over, but the 2024 class was really highly rated too. It wasn't as big,
Yeah.
and there were a few more transfers than we've seen subsequently. But this is such, like, and we're going to have so much time to talk about this, but 2025 is so fascinating. We've kind of talked about this in the group chat too, because the expectations are really high. There's no more excuses. He's brought back his offensive and defensive coordinators for the first time in his TCU tenure. He has rebuilt this roster to his specifications. He's gotten the support both financially and unilaterally from the university in order to do so. These are the guys that he wanted. It's still a very young team in a lot of areas, but there isn't going to be a lot of grace given because of the expectations. Everything's been building towards this year in so many ways, but the schedule is tough. They have on paper a challenging Big 12 slate, and then you open the season, of course, at UNC. And so, this is a team who is probably going to be picked to go 7-5, 8-4, finish kind of in the upper half of the middle of the pack in the conference, and that would not be a result that I think TCU fans would be excited about, even though it might be a ultimately better season than a 9-win season in 2024.
Right. Yeah. As I believe our good friend Parker Fleming put it, this team has the chance to be much better than last year and have a worse record
Yeah.
just because of the schedule, how it
Yeah.
bears out. But some of the guys that aren't going to be contributing to the 2025 team, but will hopefully in years beyond, are the 6 new faces the TCU has added to its 2025 recruiting class since June 8th. We are recording this on June 23rd, so 15 days roughly, and the Frogs have almost doubled their recruiting class size in that time span. First is Vincent Johnson Jr., big interior offensive lineman out of Sulphur Springs, number 32 overall interior offensive lineman, according to our rankings over at 24/7 Sports. This was a huge addition. We know how much Sonny loves to recruit offensive linemen in bulk out of high school. He has, I believe, 3 now committed for this class, 2 or 3. And I wouldn't be shocked to see that get up to 3 or 4, with 1 or 2 more coming in maybe the next couple of weeks. They're feeling really good about a couple guys on the recruiting trail right now as well. So Vincent Johnson Jr., number 32 overall inside offensive lineman, number 53 overall recruit in the state of Texas. Big ad there. Love some big uglies up front.
Love a big
coming in.
ugly.
A huge kid too. I believe he's let's see. He's
6'5",
listed on
310.
yeah, big boy. Big kid. You love to see it. Another guy, Plano safety Bradley Brown, committed to the Frogs a couple days after that on the 10th. He is the number 66 overall safety in the 2025 class and number 135 kid in the state of Texas. He was a big ad. The Frogs flipped a defensive back from Oklahoma State in this time span as well. Jason Bradford was Oklahoma State's highest rated recruit.
And now he's TCU's second highest rated recruit.
And now he's TCU's second highest rated recruit. He's a DB out of Temple. He played corner in high school. My understanding is that there's a chance he could also play a little safety when he gets to college. He's the number 33.
Very excited about this kid.
Yeah, this is a kid who just physically looks the part.
Yeah.
You watch him on film. He's incredibly fluid. Love his game, and am super excited to see him get on campus. Number 33 overall player in the state of Texas, number 219 overall in the 24/7 Sports rankings. Next up, James Scott, wide receiver, 6'4", 6'5", depending on the service, out of Conroe, the number 96 overall player in Texas. You know, this is a kid who I think has flown a little under the radar, but won't continue to fly under the radar after this season.
Yeah.
He has, I say fly under the radar. He's already got 27 offers,
Oh, okay.
but Arizona State, Florida State, Kansas State, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tech, USC, Utah. Not the SEC hasn't gotten their hooks on him yet. Maybe they won't. But this is a kid who's racked up a ton of offers, incredibly talented, and just kind of fits that bigger outside wide receiver mold that we know Malcolm Kelly can work with so incredibly well. Super excited for him to get on campus, and I believe all of these guys that we're talking about are early enrollees as well, and will
Yeah,
be here
that
in
seems
January.
to be the norm now. So
Yeah. Two more. The Frogs added a running back to this class as well. G. Ivory Graham. I think I'm saying that right. Someone asked him how to say it on Twitter the other day, and he just typed his name out again because asking an 18-year-old how to say their name on Twitter probably never works out well. But he also said that he just goes by G. So G. Graham, running back out of San Antonio. He's the number 45 overall running back in this class, number 117 kid in the state of Texas. He is very under the radar. He only has 5 total offers. TCU is his only Power 4 offer. And this is a kid who the staff absolutely loves. They had him at a camp recently, and he absolutely popped. And so he got an offer and jumped on it pretty quickly.
Not a big guy, but pretty explosive. Seems like he's pretty quick
Yeah.
in and out of his breaks, and has some pretty decent breakaway speed too.
Absolutely. And that will probably be the only running back they add for this class. That room is pretty full, and you want to see how guys like Nate Palmer do with a little bit more snap time this season. And then the most recent commitment is Braden Bach, a tight end out of Argyle right here in DFW, who committed live on Dave Campbell's Texas Football all over the weekend, I believe on Saturday evening, in front of quite a few people. I don't know if you watched the live stream, Melissa, or if you saw the replay video. No. He was at it looked like he was at like a Katy Trail style, Rogers Roundhouse style place, just kind of like outdoor patio, lots of gravel and big wooden tables and stuff. And it was absolutely packed. I don't know if they just like showed up there and it was wide open or what was going on, but it was packed out with people in purple. He had the whole squad out. His whole football team was there for his commitment video, and he picked the Frogs over Kansas State and Kansas.
Listen, if you're telling me a tight end is picking TCU over Kansas State, I'm going to like that tight end. I'm going to be excited about that tight end. And it seems like he's a kid that he can definitely be effective in the passing game, but a really willing blocker and a great size. This kid going into a senior season is already like 6'4", 225, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is a big beefy boy to play that position. And TCU started to, we've seen instances of how effective they can be using a tight end, and he seems like he is the perfect guy to kind of take that mantle here in the next couple of years.
Totally agree, and this is the only tight end that they were really looking at for the 25 class, so landing him was big, and this is a good addition for TCU as well. Six bodies in 15 days. The staff has been working their tails off because just right before this hot streak on the recruiting trail, they had their annual 2-day huge showcase where it's over 2,000. It's over 1,000 a day recruits on campus working out for 50 to 60 schools from across the country. All their coaching staffs come in and just watch a bunch of kids work out. TCU does a fantastic job with this event every year. And so they coordinated all of this, and now they've hit this really nice hot streak coming off of that weekend on the recruiting trail. And I don't think it's done yet. I think we're going to see a couple more guys commit by the end of June, early July. Over the next maybe 2-3 weeks, we're going to see a couple more guys lock in with the Horned Frogs. So momentum is building with this class. They've jumped quite a bit over the last couple weeks. They're up to 38 in the team rankings on 24/7 now with 13 commits. Won't be the biggest class in the world. You mentioned it already. I think it was 29 signees last cycle, so they're not going to take a ton. this cycle. But the guys they've got are guys they've really wanted. They're guys that are incredibly talented and should make TCU better in the short term and in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you see small, like a lot of times you're going to look at that overall team composite rankings and everything and think, oh, this isn't a very good class. It's a drop off. But you have to remember that volume plays into that as well. I think that taking a small but very targeted class this cycle is ultimately what TC needs to do. I mean, we're looking at roster cut downs and different things. You have to be a little bit more choosy and a little bit more specific. And I think it shows the desire to really, going back to retention, to retain the guys that they already have. You don't want to be creating a ton of roster spots outside of natural graduation matriculation. And so if they end up only needing to take 18 to 22 guys, that is probably a really good sign, because that means that most of this relatively young team has decided to stay invested at TCU.
100%. And that's how you want it to work. And we're seeing this across sports right now at TCU. Is retention is a big deal, and it's happening not just in football, but it's happening in baseball, where they held on to pretty much every key piece that they needed for a big run in 2026. It happened in women's basketball, where they hit the portal really hard and didn't see a lot of contributors from the 2025 tournament run disappear. Right? They kept a couple key role players that probably had opportunities elsewhere and decided to stick around. Beach volleyball is doing a lot to keep kids in the program. Just up and down the roster in TCU athletics right now, it looks like retention is a really big priority, and they're doing a good job.
And that fits with the overall vibe of TCU, right? Like that is kind of what TCU is all about. And so it makes sense that they're trying to treat athletics the way they treat the rest of that university and keep that family feel and have people invested beyond just the sport that they play. I mean, that if you can find the right kids that will buy into TCU as a whole community, you're still going to have to pay them. But the hope is that you're not paying them a year at a time. And until we get contracts, which seems like an inevitability here at this point, that you want those guys that they're not going to come back every offseason and say, well, I need another 50K or I need another 100K or whatever else. You want them to say, hey, you're doing right by me. I'm going to continue to do right by you. And TCU's going to have to continue to pay. I mean, that's just the way that it is now. But it seems like they're being financially responsible while also all in and on winning.
Yeah, you can spend up to the cap limit and still be financially responsible. And I think TCU is trying to do that. Hey, I have a fun stat for you, Melissa.
Okay.
76% is the national retention rate average for first-year students in college across the country.
Okay.
That's not just student athletes. That's just students in general. The average first to second year retention rate is 76%.
That's crazy.
Do you know what TCU's is?
Oh, I'm going to guess it's higher because we do have the happiest students.
That is correct.
So I would be super impressed with anything over like 82%.
93%.
No way.
Yeah. So retention happens not just in the student in the athletics department, but across campus. Students are getting there and falling in love with the campus and staying for longer than 1 year.
And 92% when you're not being paid, but you're paying
93%. Let's not.
My bad.
That 1%
I don't want to
matters.
short that 1% marketing team. But yeah, that when you're paying and not being paid is really, really impressive. That's great. I mean, listen, like we both managed to hang around that university for well after our college years.
True.
So I guess there's a reason for it.
And they're still like unlocking doors for us and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. It's and like inviting us to come watch things and allowing us to hang out. Like, who would have thunk?
And that exact thing happened this morning when I was sitting on the little bench outside of Schollmeyer Arena, and here comes Steven Schoen with multiple bags of things because it was 7:00 in the morning. Swiped his ID card, all the doors unlocked, and you and I got to watch a little men's basketball practice this morning.
Yeah, it was fun. This nothing about anything we've said leading up to this changed today, but it was really fun to see a team that plays with a ton of energy, that is loud. They talk. We had a blast for about 5 minutes giving all of our superlatives on Brock Harding and all the things people are going to be saying about him this season. But look, the team is small. And they're going to have to play fast, and they're not good at playing fast right now. It's also
of course not. I mean,
25% into summer ball.
Right. They're a quarter of the way through summer ball, and half these guys just got on campus like 8 days ago. So it's going to take time to mesh. I think my biggest takeaway from this morning is the fact that everyone was there and available to play.
That was
you
huge.
think about think about the last two off seasons, there have been transfers for TCU that haven't gotten on campus until the end of July because they're dealing with finishing up classwork
Yeah.
at their previous school. You've got guys that missed off seasons with a torn ACL like Malik Diallo did last year, or with perpetual back issues like Ernest Uday
Yeah.
dealt with. So he was out of practice a lot last year. And I think when you have a team that, yes, they retained 6 contributors from last year's squad, which is a huge step forward from 2 years ago. But when you have so much roster turnover, you have to get these guys playing basketball together.
Yeah.
Like that's so important just to understanding, guys' tendencies and figuring out where you're supposed to be on certain sets, and how you guys like to be talked to when you're talking through defensive assignments and that kind of thing. And the last two off seasons, it doesn't feel like TCU's been able to develop that to the point that they've needed to be consistently competitive night in and night out. And so my biggest takeaway from this morning was just the fact that every single player that is currently on scholarship on the roster was dressed out and was running and was practicing at full speed on Monday morning. I think that's the biggest win that TCU basketball has had so far this offseason.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can't get better if you don't get to play, and getting everybody out there playing is mandatory for those two things to happen. I think that what I liked is it seems like this is a group of guys that are meshing really well, like off the court and personality-wise. There was a lot of talk. There was a lot of high fives. There's a lot of pulling teammates aside to talk them through specifics. There was no attitude. They played physical, but there wasn't a lot of scuffling after some of those physical plays, which I think is unusual in the transfer portal era. And I think the on-court chemistry will come because it does seem like they liked each other. I love the leadership I saw from Brock Harding. I thought that Jaden Pierre was very, very vocal, played with really great energy. I think that Punch is never going to be a yeller, but he was certainly the leader of that post group. And Jace Posey was vocal as a leader this morning as well, which was great to see. He's still super athletic. But
Turns out didn't lose it.
Yeah, he did like 3 things. I was like, oh my God, this guy, like if that jumper can just get consistent, he is so hard to guard because he can do so many insane things around the rim. And I do think that he's going to be helped a lot by just having some outside shooting. We saw them really hitting shots today in a way that has been a rare occurrence for TCU basketball in the last couple of years.
Tanner Toolson, the Utah Valley transfer, was knocking them down left and right today, which is really cool to see. We've seen that in off seasons in the past, and it hasn't always borne out in the regular season. So just kind of a side note, all of these observations about both basketball teams that we're going to get into, we recognize that it is June 23rd, right? No basketball is being played for 4 months, aside from maybe an exhibition here or there. And so really this is all just our observations from 1.5 hours of practice on a random morning in June. But that being said, Tanner Toolson seems like he truly is one of the better spot-up pure shooters that TCU has gotten on campus in the last few years. Trey Tennyson was another guy who we saw streaky during the season, but kind of, when he got hot, he was incredibly hot. I think Toolson could be one of those guys. Just he took a lot of contested threes today and knocked them down, found his way into open space on the perimeter when guys were driving. Like he just kind of has a sense about where he needs to be in any given moment to give himself the best look.
Well, and here's the biggest difference between Tanner Toolson and Trey Tennyson, and even going back to Desmond Bain and some of the great shooters we've seen. This dude's all of 6'5".
Yeah.
And there's a massive difference between being an outside shooter that's a legit 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", versus being, Trey Tennyson, who is
6'2".
Maybe, I think that
maybe
was a generous 6'2".
Yeah.
Probably, and, even Bain is probably 6'3" most of his college career. He may have grown a little bit. So he can create space. He's a big guard. He's got a decent handle. I don't think we're going to see him do a lot of shooting off the dribble or attacking the rim, but he's a guy that he can really benefit off of the penetration that the other guards around him are going to be able to do. So I really liked what I saw out of him, and I think if he's a very specific role, he has a chance to be really successful and be that 40, 41, 42% three-point shooter that TCU has been desperate for the last couple of seasons, and do it at a pretty high volume too. So, and I just think he's going to have looks because Punch continues to evolve his low post game. And Brock Harding is going to be a problem for teams. He's not big, but he really he is a true point guard in a way that, again, we just have not seen a whole heck of a lot of at TCU, and I think he's going to be a big difference maker.
Yeah, one of the big things that really hurt last year's squad was Frankie Collins going down because he was their lone
Yeah,
facilitator, and even
he's a
then
score first.
he's a scorer. He's capable of scoring and getting downhill and getting to the rim. Not that Brock Harding isn't. I thought we saw him attack the rim really well a couple times this morning. Be physical with a lot bigger players around the rim. But he really, I think, at his core, is an excellent distributor. Another guy that really stood out to me this morning was Bug Edwards, the only
Yeah.
freshman signee of this class for TCU. He has incredible speed. Lefty shooter with a little bit of an awkward shot, but he was knocking down threes this morning. He was getting to the rim. I was talking to one of the coaches later in the day, and he said that the whole staff to a T really sees Bug's downhill speed. The comp there is Mike Miles, and whether he bears out like Mike did at TCU to be one of the all time greats at TCU, obviously TBD. But
Yeah.
the fact that that's kind of the comp for his speed and his ability to get downhill and get towards the rim, I think is a really nice aspect of his game that TCU can benefit from right out of the gate. Because again, last year, you had a lot of guys who could create, could get to the rim at times, but you didn't have a guy who could just blow by
Yeah.
people and get to the rim, or in a fast break situation pull away from guys. And Bug Edwards seems to have the speed and the skill set to be able to
Yeah.
do that occasionally for the Frogs this year.
Well, what I also like about his game is he's not like a lot of times you'd see a freshman, especially be the only freshman that come in and try to force the issue, force the action, and prove themselves. He's very unselfish. He's aggressive, but he also seems to have a really high IQ for such a young player. And we saw him make a couple of plays where he got into traffic and gave it up. Found a cutter, different things like that. So there's a lot of reason to be cautiously optimistic about this squad. I think the guards have a chance to be a real strength, even in a league that's so dominated by exceptional guard play. I think this unit can at least hold their own with most of the top teams in this league across the board. And there's depth that we didn't, we've really been lacking. So we haven't even mentioned, Ashton Simmons, who I thought did some really nice things.
Yeah.
RJ still looks like knocking a little bit of the rust off after sitting last year. But I think he has a chance to be a contributor. I mean, this is a team that could probably go pretty consistently 8 to 10 deep with guys that can play and not have a massive drop off. But as we've been singing from the heavens all off season, there's not a lot of post depth. There's not a lot of size inside, and they are lacking a true center by not just size but positionability.
Yeah, I think they've got some developmental guys that could work their way into that. But the challenge, I think, for Malik Diallo and FIU transfer, whose name is escaping me
Yanni
currently.
Salachim.
Okay, we'll go with that.
We've got some learning to do.
Yeah, the Oregon State
LT,
kid too. LT. They just
yeah.
called LT because we
No one
asked
knows
what
that
3 or 4 people how
Yeah.
to say his last name.
They
Nobody
said
knows how.
LT. Yeah.
That's all right. We'll just call him LT. I'll figure it out. But with Salachum and Diallo, like they're both legitimately 6'9", 6'10", right? It's not the height that's the issue. It's the fact that Salachum is 215 pounds, right? I weigh more than that, and I am 6'3", right? So like, we got to get some meat on those bones. And the same with Diallo. He's listed at 230, and the length is there for kind of the defensive shot blocking, being able to help trap and cause some problems there. They both seem to have somewhat refined offensive games, from post moves to lob threat to being able to be a good screen and roll guy and that kind of thing. But my biggest concern from that size standpoint is when a bigger guy posts you up, how are you going to respond? And then also, how does that impact TCU as a rebounding team, specifically defensive rebounding team? Because we saw at times last year they just could not, for the life of them, pull down a defensive rebound, and those second chance points add up and add up and add up, and that's how teams can build leads and build bigger leads and start to pull away late in games. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I will say Xavier Edmonds is all of 240, 250, even though he's about 6'8", I think. So that's kind of cut from the same cloth as Jawan Roberts at Houston, not nearly as physical of a player as Jawan Roberts, but same kind of build. Really smooth, hit a three today.
Yeah.
That looked, really natural for him. So another potential offensive threat coming from the JUCO ranks is Xavier Edmonds. And between him, Punch, Diallo, and Salachim, I think they've got a decent rotation of big men. I just don't know what the roles look like. I don't know who they're going to really depend on to go in and say, hey, we need to lock down defensively and we need to lock down on the glass now. Who's going to be that guy that can go and do that for them?
Yeah, and Xavier Edmonds is going to be a bucket. Like, I really think he's going to be able to score at this level. He's just so smooth and looks so natural. But, we'll have to see what his defensive intensity and what his rebounding intensity. He pulled down a ton of boards at the JUCO level. I think the scoring translates a little bit easier than defense and rebounding does when you make that jump. So it'll be interesting to see the buy-in, but I also know Jamie Dixon probably wouldn't have recruited him out of the JUCO level if he didn't think he could defend and rebound, right? Like that's
right.
Even the way that he plays now, those are still pretty important tenets. It was also interesting because we saw a lot of Adam Stewart. This is the first time that we've gotten a chance to see him. Now that's a kid I don't anticipate him being in the rotation, but he is 6'11", 240. And he does have legit center size. He still looks not quite ready, but he's an older kid, right? Like he was a kid that was a mission kid, I think. So
he's a BYU kid. He's been on his mission, so he's a little older.
Yeah.
I think my biggest, you're right. I think he's still kind of learning and developing. It feels a little robotic at times with some of his movements, but there's no doubt, like he's soft hands around the rim. Is a big body, bigger presence that TCU could lean on if they really, really needed to. They have the bodies, right? Like they've got the guys, I think, to be competitive. It's just about putting all the pieces together.
Yeah, I think that I'm not going to set the expectation super high, but after missing the tournament, this is a team and a roster that can certainly compete to get back to the NCAA tournament. The Big 12 did not get easier this offseason. It did not get weaker. It probably got worse, and so it's going to be a grind, and it's going to be frustrating, and the fan base is going to be frustrated, but I think that there is a lot to be excited about, and I think that this version of TCU basketball can get out and run. I think they can score in bunches, and I think they'll be really pesky defenders. It's going to be hard for them to lock down teams, but they'll get their hands on balls and deflections. They'll create steals. They'll get out and run in the open floor, and once they kind of get that chemistry together to be able to play fast, I think that they can win games with speed and athleticism and hopefully a little bit better shooting.
Hopefully. If the shooting's not better, I don't know what to tell you after last year.
It's going to be a long season.
There were tough times last year, especially from three-point range. You know who I don't think will have tough times?
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Is the other basketball team that we got to observe today, and that was the women's basketball team. They kicked off their practices a couple weeks ago. We walked in about 5 o'clock and watched an hour-long practice today. A little bit of a different setup for women's basketball right now than the men, simply because they've got 3 people on the roster playing for their respective national teams, including Olivia Miles, the big transfer guard from Notre Dame, who is playing for Team USA's under-19 squad right now. Under 20 squad right now, one of those two. And then you have 2 more players playing for their respective countries, Germany and Portugal.
Yeah, both Claras are
both Claras are overseas currently playing for their national teams as well. So you're short a couple folks there. A couple folks are banged up, so were not practicing today. But still, we got to see some old faces. Dono Hunter, Tay Bigsby, both looked great today. Nat Zurich was knocking down threes.
Good Lord, she was shooting the lights out.
And we saw some new faces that I know you and I were both wildly impressed with for a variety of reasons. Let's start with one of those new faces, Melissa. Bauer knows where I'm going with this. He wants to talk about Marta Suarez as well.
Yes, he does.
The Cal transfer, all of 6'3", but handles smooth, can drive the lane, score around the rim. Looks like she's going to be a real offensive threat. Physical player, can probably defend some of those bigger centers in the league as well. What were your takeaways from Marta today when you were watching her?
Well, I was so impressed with her and how physical she is. And then one of the strength coaches was like, she's sick today. She's not even 100%.
Yeah.
She's a little under the weather. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what she's going to be like. I thought she was the biggest position of need for TCU to be successful this season outside of obviously like the star power of Olivia Miles. Like you need, and that's what this team was lacking last year. They had good size, they didn't have a bully. And Marta Suarez is a bully. I immediately like looked over at you and it was like Audie Crooks. Like she is gonna give Audie Crooks hell next year. Like that's like was my number one takeaway. But I love the fact that she's really confident of a shooter from outside. She can get behind the 3-point line. She can go into 15 feet. She can put the ball on the deck. They were doing some one-on-ones and she was matched up with Donovan Hunter. And she really gave Dono some problems. Like Dono had the first step on her easily, could get by her, but I thought that Marta really recovered well and used her physicality really, really impressively. So I think she's going to be kind of on the verge of a double-double pretty much every single night, even though she's not the tallest player out there. She just plays with a lot of energy and really understands how to use her body successfully on the defensive end and on the glass. I think she's going to be a critical piece for this team in order to be successful.
Yeah, she was very fun to watch, and like you, I'm excited to see when she's feeling 100% what she looks like out there, because that is, she reminds me of just the physicality to an extent, is a little bit like Agnes was last year. Agnes was like, but 6'3", right? Like Agnes is 5'10", 5'11", on a good day. Physical. Loose balls are always hers, those kinds of things. I don't know that Marta's necessarily going to hit the deck a lot like that.
Yeah.
But just like the defensive physicality, the physical presence makes you really have to work for it. That all kind of reminded me of Agnes Emanopu, who was obviously so integral to that Elite Eight run last year.
Yeah, I'm telling you, though, that for TCU fans, if there's a name that nobody's talking about yet, that is the player that you need to start paying attention to, it is the 6'8" freshman out of Victoria, Australia, or Wisconsin, as JB said earlier, Sarah Portlock. I have never seen an 18-year-old that is that tall and that coordinated and smooth. Like
smooth.
I grew in 6th grade, and when I graduated, by the time I got to high school, I was already pretty much 5'10", 5'11". I was not coordinated for like a solid 10 to 15 to 30 years after. So to see her, the way that she moves, her footwork is impeccable. And this is obviously this is where I think the international athletes have a little bit of an advantage because they've grown up more in these like sports centric schools. And she's obviously has received really good coaching and really good preparation. Her whole family was in town, which was really adorable. And her brother, who looked like he was 12 but was 6'10", walked by us at one point, and I was like, oh my God, like this must run in the family. But she has this team does not have the 6'7", like all of their height is a little bit inexperienced. And it's really thin. And I think it's going to be good. Like, I really liked what we saw to Kennedy Basham today too. I think she's going to be excellent. But they're all kind of built, kind of tall and thin. Cause when you're 6'7", you are. Portlock has a little bit more size to her. Super athletic, really well conditioned, but she's a little bit thicker and she's got a little bit more natural strength to her at that size. I would not be shocked whatsoever if she plays as a freshman. I think she's in the rotation freshman year, and we haven't seen Clara Silva yet, who's the other 6'7" transfer out of Kentucky. But like I said, we saw Basham, who's 6'7", and she didn't have a ton of minutes under her belt, but I think she is a really good player. She's got a really nice looking shot from outside and can stretch it to 3. So they're kind of the opposite problem of the men. They have a really, really great post rotation and a lot of size inside. Their size is just, we're going to have to wait and see because it's pretty young for the most part.
Yeah, I think it was interesting too that when they were running some full court stuff later in practice, they had, obviously they were limited because of the bodies they had, but they had Kennedy Basham and Sarah Portlock running together.
Could you
on
imagine?
The same team.
Could
and
you
that's
imagine?
2 6'7" centers. And Kennedy has, like you said, the ability to stretch it a little bit. We saw Portlock hit, I think, one or two shots from like near the elbow, so she has a little bit of. You can figure out some spacing there, especially when you've got Silva on the bench to rotate in. You've got, obviously, you can't forget about Emily Hunter either.
Hunter. Yeah, she looks really good. She's
grown
working.
up a lot. I
She's
think
working.
you can tell just from when she was on campus in the spring. Just kind of sitting there on the end of the bench to now, she looks like she's just
more comfortable and
way more comfortable out there. From a guards perspective, we didn't get to see a lot of the guards today. Obviously, Olivia Miles was out. Talia Parker was out as well. She's a little banged up right now, but we did get to see uh, one of the players that I think is going to have an incredible season for TCU. I'm hoping so, anyways, and that's Donovan Hunter.
Yeah.
She was so great down the stretch for TCU last year as a sophomore. Was a second ball handler when Haley Van Lith needed a breather, was an incredible defender from half court down to the 3-point line. And today she was on fire,
Menace.
forcing turnover, just a menace defensively, forcing
Menace.
turnovers, getting breakaways, picking off passes cross court. Like she was everywhere defensively. And when they were doing 3-point drills, she was knocking them down.
Yeah.
And so I think you've got an opportunity to have obviously Olivia Miles with all the star power and the incredible ball handler and the fantastic passer that she is. But to have a second option like Donovan Hunter, who can command the offense, can handle herself defensively, can create for herself and others, I am really looking forward to seeing what year two in purple looks like for Donovan Hunter.
Yeah, she really unlocked something, in the Big 12 tournament and kind of beyond that with her looking to score more. And I think for so much of the season, especially as the youngest player on the team, she took a back seat to Madison Connor and Haley Van Lith. And yeah, like, sure, absolutely take a back seat offensively to those players. But
That's reasonable.
yeah, but when the attention turned to them, she was on fire. I think she had a stretch where she hit like 12 of 17 threes or something like that. Insane. Just showed that she can score when she needs to. When you look at playing with Olivia Miles and Maddie Shear, who they said they're hoping to return to full contact here in the coming weeks, which would be great news. But if Dono can, we kind of called it out today. If she could shoot around 38% from three, she doesn't need to take more than 2 or 3 attempts a game, but she's got to show she can make them. If she does need to take 5 or 6, and then still slot into that point guard role and be more of a distributor and be one of the best defensive guards in the country, which I think she absolutely. She looked quicker today. She looked quicker than we saw her last year. And part of that's probably because she's not going to have to play 38 minutes a game. That's probably going to be a huge thing for her, too. So I think she is going to, Olivia Miles and Haley Van Lith are 2 very different players that have some similar skill sets. I think Donovan has a chance to really benefit from playing with Olivia Miles. Just with her creativity with the ball. Haley is a downhill, bully, physical guard,
Score
combo
first
guard.
guard.
Yeah. Whereas Olivia Miles can be a score first guard, but I think we'll see. She won't have to deal with Hannah Hidalgo hogging the ball, but I didn't say that. So we'll see where she kind of lies in that. But I think she's such a creative distributor. Haley's a playmaker. There's a creativity and a flair to Olivia Miles that I think is going to pair really well with what we saw out of Donovan today. And on that note, speaking of returners, Taylor Bigby is I think you and I both agree that is the breakout player that can be the biggest difference maker for TCU this season. We talk about retention. To be getting Taylor Bigby to stay and commit to TCU as probably a role player was one of the biggest wins that this coaching staff had of the offseason. To me, it's as critical as anything else. And Nat Mazurek, for that matter, too. Mm-hmm. Getting both of them to come back and understand that it's going to be hard to break into the starting lineup, but you're going to play and we have a role for you. Taylor was physical. She was aggressive. She had a couple of nice shooting stretches, a couple of nice scores. But she had a beautiful Euro step through that I'm like, okay, back-to-back points to finish off one of their 5-on-5 games. If she can have that confidence as an offensive weapon, then I think that, again, it's like, who do you guard? Like, pick your poison with this team. They can hurt you in so many different ways.
They truly can. They truly can. And I think ultimately my biggest takeaway from today, for the men, it was availability, just having everyone there. This version of TCU women's basketball this year, though, generally speaking, is much bigger and more physical. And when you think about when TCU struggled at times last year, specifically against South Carolina and Texas, and even Kansas State
and Oklahoma State too,
is when other teams decided that they were just going to be kind of the bigger physical bully. TCU really struggled to run their offensive sets and score consistently. And you can see that there was a very obvious concerted effort this offseason to get bigger and more physical. And some of those players from this team last year have taken some time this offseason to get more physical as well. So there's a clear mindset in my mind for TCU women's basketball. Their goal is to get bigger and more physical so that they don't when the biggest bully comes
Yeah.
to the playground, they're ready to stand up to them and still be able to execute at a high level. So looking forward to both of these basketball programs as the fall gets closer and closer, because I think that you said cautiously optimistic for the men's team. I think I'm very optimistic about what this women's basketball team could accomplish this year.
And their schedule, like, it's not going to be easy. The Big 12 is good, but they had to go to Oklahoma State, to Kansas State, to Iowa State, and they went
Yeah.
1 and 2 of those games this season ago. They get all of those three teams at home for a single game. So they really get to control things. We're going to have to see this team come together. We didn't even mention Veronica Sheffy, who might be the quickest player on the floor. She was,
Yeah, she had a really
yeah,
nice little pull up at
ugh,
the free throw line today.
ugh,
That is like she was going full speed, and then all of a sudden she was
yeah,
vertical in the
yep.
air, and she was knocking down a jumper. That was
Yeah,
really cool to
it
see.
was beautiful. But the depth, the biggest thing that hurt them was they were playing 5.5 players, the last
Yep.
3 weeks of the season, and so I think that being able to confidently go 8 to 10 deep pretty consistently, even in a close game, is going to be huge. I think the guard depth, if you can get everybody back healthy, is going to be really significant for this team. There's no reason not to be super excited and to already put the Sweet 16 out into the ethos as an expectation for this group. But we got to see them play before we can really. I'm gonna wait at least like a week into the season before I say Sweet 16 or bust. I think I said it in October last year, and I have no regrets, and I was right. But
True.
until we get everybody back, I want to see a full practice and maybe a scrimmage, and then maybe I don't know. I'm probably going to say it in like September. Who are we kidding?
That's fair.
Yeah, after football loses their first game at whatever point that is, and I start thinking, oh no, everything's terrible. You know what? Women are going to the Sweet 16 again. It'll be fine.
Football ain't losing this year.
They're undefeated, 12-0. I think I've heard you say that before, and I'm pretty sure it was 2023.
It was 2022. I was never wrong.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Hey, you know who might go undefeated? They won't because there's too many games, but TCU baseball kind of went undefeated this offseason almost.
Well, yeah, they've had a really good offseason. I think retention wise, just keeping your roster together is so important, especially for this squad when you had, I think 72% of your home runs were from sophomores or younger.
Yeah.
You had a really small signing class with just 6 guys coming in for the 25 class. And so what we've seen Kirk and his staff do is really just kind of address some smaller needs or some bigger needs as well in the transfer portal. Just 3 ads so far, but if you had to look at TCU baseball and say what's one significant position of need, I think down to a T, especially with the transferring out of Carson Bowen and Isaac Cadena, every TCU fan would have said we need a first baseman.
Yeah. First baseman who can hit for power.
Have to go find a first baseman, preferably one that has a right-handed bat with a little bit of pop. And they did that. They got Rob Liddington, a kid out of Incarnate Word. He spent 2 seasons there. He was at JUCO in Phoenix prior to that. Can absolutely swing the bat and is a big body at first base. He's about 6'4", 225. 15 home runs for Incarnate Word this year, hit 359, I believe, at the plate. But he also had 5 triples and like 12 doubles. So he's got some really good speed for a bigger dude. And just if there's been one thing that's been lacking from this roster, I think the last couple of years, it's a true first baseman who hits for power from the right side. And they had that to an extent in 23 with Cole Fontenelle, even though he's a left-handed bat. And now Rob Liddington comes in. I really like this addition a lot. I think this is a big get for the Frogs because it fills a position of need. It gives you a middle of the order bat that can hit home runs in Lupton, and gives you the theoretically, it gives you stability in that aspect of the lineup. You're not having to shuffle guys around to try and make ends meet, make things work like we saw TCU doing at times this year.
Yeah, if he can be an everyday first baseman, that's a massive win for TCU baseball. And then you kind of look at the potential continuity that's going to be around him, depending on what happens in the draft. And, guys like Anthony Silva, and I mean, is he the only – Cole Kramer is back, right? He's got one more year. And I'm assuming Liddington will have 2 years because JUCO doesn't count against your eligibility now, correct?
I think that's right. I'll have to check on that,
Yeah,
but I think he'll get an extra year. And who knows? I mean, you have a great next year. He's draft eligible anyways, right? So he could go and just be one and done at TCU. But you have the potential. Cole Kramer has eligibility. He's coming back. You have Colton Griffin. You have Jack Bell, right? So even if you lose Anthony Silva to the draft, you have 3 really strong infielders there. You've got Lucas Franco coming in, who could probably step in and play shortstop. Defensively, he's incredibly good, right? It's just questions about the bat for that incoming freshman, I think, a little bit. But you feel like your infield is set.
Yeah.
You held on to. You didn't really have to like hold like grip it really hard, but you held on to Sawyer Stroh-Snyder, Chase Brunson, and Noah Franco. They all are, they got their deals, right? They
Yep.
didn't even think about testing the transfer portal. All the
Which is
stuff we heard.
incredible because Stroh Snyder would have gotten whatever he wanted from
Oh,
an
and
SEC school.
yeah, absolutely. But when you're a draft eligible sophomore playing baseball 30 minutes from your
Yeah.
house where your mom and dad come see you every play, every day, and you're still getting paid like you
Yeah.
should, why leave,
Yeah.
right? Why leave? This team has all the potential to make a significant deep run in the postseason in 2026. You're where you need to be. And so for Stroh Snyder, I don't think there was ever any real consideration about hitting the portal. Same for Franco, same for Brunson, same for all these other guys that they really needed to hold on to. Tommy Lepore, Louis
Traeger
Rodriguez,
now
Traeger.
becomes Nolan becomes huge with Bowen having left.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I've seen a lot of kind of gnashing of teeth and rending of clothes over Carson Bowen and Isaac Cadena both leaving. And like I said this on Twitter the day it happened. Carson Bowen is one of my favorite players that I've ever covered at TCU in any sport. He's smart. He's funny. He's really gracious with his time. He's an incredibly hard worker. He's a very well loved and respected teammate, and he was a veteran presence for this team this year. And when he stepped up and said, I'll do it. I'll be the first baseman. I'll be that guy consistently." And then he also was asked to hit at the top of the lineup.
Yeah.
That's when things started to get more consistent up and down the lineup for TCU and in that dugout. So there is no doubt that Carson Bowen has played a massive role for this program the last 3 seasons, but he wants to catch full time.
Yeah.
And he deserves to catch full
future.
time.
Yeah.
He's got his best prospects are at catcher, and the way was blocked, right? It's a hard decision to have to make as a head coach when you say, well, on the one hand, I have this former freshman All-American who's done everything we've asked him to do and then some. And then we also have this current freshman All-American, and they both play the same position.
Yeah.
And so, you have to have a hard conversation. And for Carson, it was, hey, Nolan Traeger is the catcher here. He's going to be the guy that catches most of the time. You've got to do what's best for you. And so he hit the portal. He landed with a really a powerhouse team in Florida. Who knows how the draft goes if he gets to Florida, if not, but someone on the message board over at Horned Frog Blitz said this, it's a really good problem to have when your second best catcher is transferring to Florida.
Yeah.
And love Carson Bowen, love his family.
Yeah.
Hope that he has all the success in the world,
Yeah.
and that he gets to be a full-time catcher for the Gators next year.
And gets a full healthy season doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to get to see Carson and his parents in Omaha next summer and then beat them. But it would be great to get to see them up there for sure. He did what's best for him, and not with no ill will. Like, he burned no bridges on his way out of town. There's nothing but respect and admiration from everybody. But I think Sarlos did what he had to do, and that you have to invest in the freshman and the guy that you've got for another 2 years. You have to build around that core and that nucleus right now. So it's exciting looking at this roster on paper. The draft is coming up in 3 weeks. It seems like most of this it's small but really, really elite signing class should make its way to campus. There's a couple of guys to be really excited about, especially in the pitching side. And you mentioned Franco defensively at shortstop is the guy that could slot in right away. We'll see what happens with Anthony Silva. And I think that's
Ben Abelt, some of these
Ben
other
Abelt's
guys,
another
draft
one
guys.
that's really interesting too. So there's a couple guys that could be going.
Yeah, Abelt's interesting because I've talked to a couple scouts about him Like, I've asked specifically, hey, what's your read on Ben Abelt? If you were his advisor, what would you say? And it's split 50-50 down the middle. The response I get, on the one hand, he's an incredibly talented left-handed arm who's already shown that he can pitch at the highest level in college. Former freshman All-American, pitched in the College World Series, lockdown closer, late inning reliever, has a couple starts under his belt, yada yada yada. So that side of the coin is he's proven everything he needs to prove in college. On the other side, there are other scouts I've talked to who have said, Want to see him become a more consistent starter, see if he has the ability to do that. Want to see if his stuff can develop just a hair more, especially like a third pitch. He's got the fastball slider locked down. Can he develop a changeup? Can he develop some more, like an off speed or like a sinker or something from that just ridiculous kind of 3/4 left-handed angle? Maybe, college is the best place to do that because he might not get the number that he wants in the draft this year. He does have another year of eligibility. I have not talked to him or people around him about what he's thinking about doing, what he's wanting for his baseball future at this point. So I have no read on what happens, whether he's drafted or not, anything like that. But when you think about the potential of Ben Abelt returning and being fully healthy and adding him to a pitching staff that has Tommy Lepore, Louis Rodriguez, Mason Brassfield, Trevor Baumler, Nate Stern, Cade Udy, all these freshmen that were really impressive at times this year. There's a veteran arm that can come in and stabilize. I mean, he was such a huge presence in the bullpen this year. They changed his title to Director of Bullpen Operations, and he was out there.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, and he was out there in the bullpen. He was their bullpen staffer all year until he couldn't travel with the team to Corvallis. That's something that I don't think we've mentioned on the show yet.
We talked about it. Yeah.
He and Carson didn't get to travel to Corvallis because of the hotel situation, and I truly believe that had an impact on the guys.
Absolutely.
Especially the younger ones. Anyways, that's in the past. That's neither here nor there now. So, you think about the potential of a Ben Abelt returning. You think about the potential of, Caven Parker, who has another year of eligibility still. What could that look like? There are a lot of options, I think, not to mention Ethan Thomas, the Hawaii pitcher, and Nolan Johnson, the kid from North Dakota State, who TCU's already added in the transfer portal. I still think they go after another arm or two, maybe even three. But it's everything that I've seen about TCU baseball and how have managed the roster this offseason so far gives me really, really a ton of hope for what could happen in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's every reason to have belief in how this coaching staff builds a roster. They've done it pretty well, pretty consistently in their time. And I think that, like you said, all the pieces are there. And there's not going to be, like we're seeing, like we talked about with basketball, where you're having to rebuild chemistry. You have your core in place. You're adding a couple of small pieces that can hopefully take you over the top, get you out of a regional, hosting a super regional, and hopefully back to Omaha, because I would like to go to there.
I would like to go to there too. I would like. Oh, we don't have time for this, but we're going to talk about it just for a second, Melissa. And I want to preface this by saying that it had, in my opinion, no real bearing on the outcome of the game on Sunday.
I disagree, but that's okay.
But Angel
disagree.
Campos, what the hell were you doing, my guy?
Yeah.
What were you doing? There is no shot that in the biggest baseball game of the season, you are letting your ego get in the way in the first inning. There's no way Kevin Schnall had worn you out enough in just one half inning of baseball for you to warn him and toss him in the span of 45 seconds.
Yeah.
That is ludicrous to me. Ludicrous to do it, to pull the trigger on tossing him, to toss his first base coach, and then for Casey Mosier to roll down the third baseline, trip over another umpire's foot, and eat it in front of what Schnall say 25,000 people there at the Chuck, only to get up embarrassed and suspend Schnall for 2 games, which will roll over to next season.
Yeah, which will 100% be rescinded.
That is. If it's not, it's an absolute stain on umpiring in college baseball, because that was the most ludicrous series of events that I think I've ever witnessed from umpires. And we've seen Casey Moser throw Kirk Sarlos out of the game and suspend him for the same thing, by the way. In 2022, in the NCAA or in the Big 12 tournament at Globe Life Field, Kirk tried to intentionally walk someone. Moser was behind the plate. He thought Kirk was making a motion at him, tossed him out of the game. And then when Kirk came out of the dugout to try and make his case and say, I was asking you to intentionally walk a guy, he got suspended for 2 games for failing to leave the field in a timely manner. It's the exact same situation, or very incredibly similar situation to what happened on Sunday. And Casey Moser was involved in both instances. And in both instances, he was the one that handed down the 2-game suspension because he made a critical, embarrassing mistake in front of a bunch of fans and tried to save face by being a tough guy. So I don't think any of those umpires should be in Omaha next year or for the foreseeable future. It was embarrassing for the sport, and it made the day, which should have been a day of celebrating LSU's 8th national championship, which is insane. One of the truest blue bloods in the sport getting another title over a team that had won 26 games in a row getting into the championship final. And everybody was talking about umpires.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely ridiculous.
It's a good argument for robot umpires, as much as I don't want them. These little boys need to grow up. They let their ego get in the way, and I think it's very much an instance of you're looking for power wherever you can grasp it, and that's what it read, I think, to most casual baseball fans. And it was, like you said, it was absolutely embarrassing for the sport. It was embarrassing for what many consider to be one of the greatest sporting events, certainly one of the greatest championship events that
Greatest
exists.
show on dirt, Melissa.
Yeah, it's and I've gotten to go to Omaha, I think 3 times now, and it, like, to have that. And I disagree. I do think it absolutely impacted Coastal Carolina. I do think that losing not only your manager but your first base coach, maybe not like strategically, maybe the least of any coach leaving a sport, but there's no way that it does not impact the mentality and the emotions in the dugout. And I do think that whole display absolutely took that team out of its game. It took it out of its headspace, and it absolutely had a negative impact on their ability to play at their highest level.
I mean, that's fair to an extent, though. I mean, Coastal's a team that's seen a ton of adversity this year. Obviously, it's a heightened situation. It's a critical moment. I think the fact that it happened in the first inning and you were up 1-0, it's like you have some runway to recover. And they did, right? I mean, obviously they had a terrible bottom of the first. They gave up 5 runs or whatever it was and just couldn't bounce back from that. But they hit a home run late. Like, they were still energetic and emotional in a good, positive way for the back half of that baseball game. They spotted
5
LSU.
Runs. Yeah, and I think
LSU 5 runs.
That was the moment, right? Like, they did recover and they did kind of get it together. But I do think that there was that 5 runs could partially be attributed to that. And I think LSU was a great team and absolutely a worthy champion. I'm not trying to take away anything from them. And they may well have still won all things, had this not happened, and nobody would have been upset. I don't think it cheapens their championship by any means necessary, but it does suck that that's what we're talking about, a couple of days later, is not that LSU won, but that how much this umpiring crew humiliated and embarrassed themselves in front of 25,000 people in the stands and millions more that saw it on social media or watched it on TV.
Yeah, just it's a bummer that that's the way the baseball season ended.
Yeah.
Congrats to LSU Tigers. They had a fantastic year. They looked great for most of it. They got to start sharing some of these pitchers with other schools.
Seriously,
they're being really selfish out there in Baton Rouge.
Yep.
That's going to do it, though, for this episode of Frogs Insider. She is Melissa Treebwasser. I am Jamie Plunkett. Big thanks to our partners over at Dave Campbell's Texas Football for continuing to put up with us into. I mean, we're about to be in our 3rd football season with DCTF. That's crazy to me. Very thankful for them. Very thankful for everyone listening to the show. Like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and we will be back soon to continue talking to you about all things TCU related. Until then, go Frogs.
Go Frogs.